off. And I contend the president knows we are much worse off. And he's not going to tell you until you figure it out or until he's reelected. And I know that's quite a charge to make. But as always, let's back it up with evidence. Last week, reports surfaced that the Obama administration was begging Germany not to take any drastic action with Greece that would collapse the European Union until after the November election. Well, why is this important? Why would the president do this? Why? What difference does Europe make? What difference does it make to us if Greece goes down? Good question. One asked to me by really smart people all the time. You've got to pay attention to Europe. No, they don't matter. Really? Then why would he do this? I'm not going to explain. I'm going to let the experts give the answer. Watch.
Untold millions must suffer so that your Euro dream can continue. Well, it won't work, because it's Portugal next. With their debt levels of 325% of GDP, they're the next ones on the list, and after that, I suspect it'll be Spain. And the bailout for Spain would be 7 times the size of Ireland, and at that moment, all of the bailout money has gone. There won't be any more.
There's a domino effect in play, essentially. If Greece defaults or approaches a position where there has to be a haircut of, say, 70% to make Greek debt sustainable, it doesn't stop there. That means the banking sector in other European countries are insolvent, need to be recapitalised by the sovereign, and that pushes them potentially tips the balance for them into default as well. So Greece going potentially unravels the whole thing.
You said that yourself. If Greece goes, next will be Spain, Italy, etc. So how can they actually let Greece go bankrupt in that situation?
John, how can they not? How can they not? Are you going to put up, I'll ask you again, are you going to put up the money? Because I'm not. Eventually, letting these debts go higher and higher and higher means the pain will be worse in 3 years, John, or 5 years, or whenever the market says, that's it, no more.
And you won't have anything left if you keep allowing them to do it. 5 or 7 years ago, I came up with a theory of mutually assured financial destruction. It is a global economy. We are all tied together. Translation: if the EU allows Greece to collapse, the EU will collapse, and America's economy will also collapse. It will happen in dominoes. And that process cannot begin before the election, because it will hurt Obama's re-election chances. And then Romney will say, if he wins, I inherited this. Let's go back a few years ago. Do you remember when the Fed opened the discount window for troubled banks? This used to have some shame involved. Nobody wanted to know that they were at the discount window. But the Fed said, no shame. It's anybody who needs the money. So people came and just got free money from the Federal Reserve to hold their banks up. Well, I remember talking about it. But what we didn't know at the time was who the biggest beneficiary of that discount window was. Was it Bank of America? Was it Citigroup? Was it AIG? No. In fact, it wasn't any American bank. Let me say that again. The biggest benefactor of the discount window was not an American bank. The biggest bailout, $600 billion in QE2 money, went to foreign banks during the peak of America's credit crisis. Your dollar went to banks overseas. Why? Because everyone involved in this administration knows they go down, we go down. The president knows this. The president is trying to patch the floodgates just for a few more weeks. I want to show you how bad it's getting now that you won't see anyplace else. Poverty is now returning to Europe unlike anything that has been seen since the Great Depression. There's a company called Unilever. It is a massive consumer products corporation. They provide things like shampoos and soaps and products that you use all the time. They are now adjusting their marketing strategy to meet the new reality that poverty is returning to Europe. When I say that, I mean World War II poverty. They're redeploying strategies that work in poor and developing countries like India and Vietnam. An official said, quote, "If a Spaniard only spends an average of 17 euros per purchase, then how can I sell him any detergent? I can't sell him detergent for half of his budget." Quote, "Well, in Indonesia, we sell individual packs of shampoo, 2 to 3 cents, and still make decent money." You're going to start seeing now over in Europe when they sell, you need a Band-Aid, they won't sell you a whole box of Band-Aids because no one will be able to afford it, just like in Vietnam. They'll sell you one Band-Aid at a time. Try this one on. You won't know it by watching the evening news or the networks, but we just surpassed $16 trillion in national debt. It took the United States 200 years to reach its first $1 trillion in debt, but the last trillion took 286 days. According to ZeroHedge.com, the government is now set to pay $340 billion in interest payments alone this year. Imagine if our credit rating keeps going down and our interest payments go higher. According to Zero Hedge's calculations, the United States Treasury, meaning you, now pays so much interest income to China that we are funding their entire military budget. Does that sound smart? The Treasury had $2.3 trillion in tax revenue just last year, but they spent $2.9 trillion. And not $2.9 trillion total, $2.9 trillion just on mandatory programs such as Social Security and Medicare. $600 billion upside down before we started paying interest or the defense budget or anything. How long till the weight of this debt crushes us? How long till inflation can no longer be hidden? You see it in the grocery store, but it's happening in Europe rapidly. Bloomberg recently reported that things are so bad now in Portugal that people are selling anything gold they have to pay for rent and put food on the table. The highlighted couple who sold their wedding rings just to make ends meet. The same is now happening in Italy. Here's a quote in the Globe and Mail from an Italian. "Since I was a child, I remember that gold was given as a gift on various occasions. And people used to say, put it aside. We used to laugh at it, but they turned out to be right. Many families are surviving because of this gold." The media and the left are laughing at this idea now here in America, but they stopped laughing now in Europe. Are you prepared? Yesterday, I was in the airport getting ready to fly American Airlines, which I have an update on, and it's not good. American banks are pulling out the stops to prepare for a Greece meltdown. I read that headline in the New York Times, the front page, and an exit of the EU. But here's what's in this story that really jumped out at me. J.P. Morgan Chase, if I'm not mistaken, is the one actually considering sending truckloads full of cash and stationing them on the Greek border. So when things go down, the trucks of cash can pull in and clients can pay local employees. Quote, "in the event money is unavailable." 80% expect Greece to leave the euro. Just 15 months ago, experts said this was an unthinkable outcome. Imagine what will be considered unthinkable 15 months from now. Transmit to Vladimir. Every American company that does business in Europe is now preparing for the euro to fail. But do you remember the billions we sent to the EU banks? The EU banks and the Fed and Treasury are doing something that's called temporary U.S. dollar liquidity swaps. So they've got all this stuff that is worth euros. We got all this stuff that's valued in dollars. Why don't we just swap? What happens when the euro becomes worthless, which appears likely? We're sitting with euros, they're sitting with dollars. We get screwed. Even Ben Bernanke says the economy is far from satisfactory. He argued over the weekend he should be able to do even more quantitative easing. This time it would be QE3, I think, and it would be even larger than QE2. And it would again involve more bond purchases. Translation, he's monetizing our debt. Translation, he's printing or digitizing money, something he said he would never do.
It's evident that either cuts in spending, increases in taxes will be necessary to stabilize the fiscal position.
Will the Federal Reserve monetize this debt?
The Federal Reserve will not monetize the debt.
That was under oath, by the way. This is why I say this man should go to jail. This is one area where I think we can agree with many people, believe it or not, in Occupy Wall Street. The Fed is corrupt and out of control. Ron Paul is right about the Fed, and thankfully, the GOP finally has an audit the Fed party plank in their platform. The current administration doesn't. They will also try to have you believe that we are through the toughest part of the storm and we're pulling ourselves out of a ditch and sunny days are ahead. They are, but not right away. The truth is, the economy is just beginning to come apart now. And the President of the United States knows this. He's just not going to tell you until after his election, or until you figure it out on your own. It is critical for every American to know this, because in order to set a course that doesn't lead to even more despair, we have to choose leaders who understand what America does, what we do best, what makes America work. Is it government, or is it the people? What is the engine of America? Is it the government? Because then you've got a mechanic in Barack Obama that can fix it. He'll make that engine bigger and bigger and bigger. But if the American engine is the American people and the individuals that build things, well, then Barack Obama's not the candidate. Does the candidate still believe in small business? The fact is it creates 70% of all jobs. Or do they believe you don't build that? The roads did. Will they invest in maximum freedom or maximum government? Do they believe in success breeding success or success coming at the expense of others? Do they believe that individuals know what's best for them or that government knows best? And finally, do they believe that America is better off than it was 4 years ago or is not better off 4 years ago and is heading for worse? The choice is pretty clear. If we don't choose the right mechanic, we first have to identify, what are we building? What kind of car are we building? Then choose the right mechanic. And if we fail to choose the right mechanic, we will deserve the Yugo that we will be building here.